Welcome everyone to the first GIST Belladonna reading series. Yeah. Peter Myers and Jameson Fitzpatrick, who are so thrilled to have here today with us. I'm Emily Brown. I'm Ayaz Muratoglu, and we're so happy to be curating and co-hosting this reading series. Before we start, we have a couple of things to say, and then we'll begin. Belladonna is a feminist avant-garde collaborative and literary press founded in 1999 in New York. Belladonna commits to adhering to the Palestinian international call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, also known as BDS, and to complying with the underlying guidelines for the Palestinian academic and cultural boycott of Israel, also known as PACI. Another note on funding, Belladonna's programming is supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council. And Belladonna's programs are made possible by the New York State Council on the Arts with the support of the Office of the Governor and the New York State Legislature.
Yeah, so this is our first in a series. We're gonna have more. You can follow along online, Belladonna. You can follow us individually. We'll be posting about it a lot. And also my magazine Hot Pink will just randomly be posting about it too. So if you follow any of those things, you can find out about the next one. And we also have these beautiful, gorgeous chapbooks. We cannot sell things inside the public library, we learned. But after the reading,
well, you can donate $5 to Belladonna and then have a chaplet as a gift. Separate from the donation. And you can do that on the PayPal QR code right up here. And our amazing volunteers, Summer and Rosie, will be happy to help you.
and if you want to pay cash, we can go a block down into the park. And we'll come back to that. Okay.
One final thing, we have a couple of around, some of your neighbors might have printouts of Jameson and Peter's words for today. We have two more if you want to read along with what they'll be saying up here.
Or if anyone has any accessibility needs where it would serve you to have a printed copy.
Okay, all right. Peter will read first, and then Jameson. I will be Jameson. I'm going to be Peter.
And here we go. I pull until there is a space that opens, Peter Meyer writes in the hangnail, his new chap out today with Belladonna. He has a way of pulling on words like taffy, stretching and repeating until something new and shiny is spun out and lands in all our hands, a little gem to sink our teeth into. Or as he puts it, I'll divide trust in itself into sherbet-colored packets to pass hand over hand over hand all the way to you. What does it mean to have a way with language? Why don't I let Peter rewrite everything I write? Thank you for coming to today's reading at Brooklyn Central Library, or as Peter would say, I put on appropriate seasonal clothing and walked to the library with other people who are also walking. In the time we are currently living in, I'm not sure how to balance the beauty of a community space like this, a reading, in the time that we are currently living in which atrocities are common and people are being murdered in Gaza as we gather here. I don't know what tone to strike. Peter might say, people keep making a puffy little fetish out of civility. I do think that poetry can connect us to each other and our own humanity, even if we don't know how we're doing it, even if we can't explain how it works. As Peter writes, I head to the roof to make illegible upward gestures. Peter Meyer's poetry is situated in the present. He does not shy away from explicit critique of the systems that oppress, nor his subject position in relation. His work employs humor to touch the heart of things, an emotional surgeon, a poet of labor. He writes, this song is about time passing. This song is about work, hating work. I am an enemy of progress, if only because I am an enemy of time. I think to be alive might be to resist time as we soak in it. We resist time by staying up too late reading or staying up too late talking to each other or talking to our coworkers when our managers would rather we pretend to do tasks to appear busy because excess time is seen as a waste of resources. But what is poetry but excess time? As Peter writes, each time I read something new I love, I'm changed so much I'm afraid it's sickness. And I feel this way about his work. I can feel it changing me and I'm jealous and I love it. The feeling isn't pain, but a place where pain would be, Peter writes in the hangnail. The way he navigates language in a tiptoe, holding your hand and pulling you along, but gently assuring, typifies a poet in control, one with a plan, a path, poet with the power of play. It is difficult to me to talk about Peter's poetry without reflecting on my own parallel and parasocial relationship to him. We have the same birthday. We went to the same colleges for undergrad and grad school. We live in the same city. Our first print and online poems were in the same print and online journals. I feel like he is a twin I have been walking slightly askew from for the past 15 years, and it's an honor to introduce him now. Peter Myers is a poet and teacher living in Brooklyn, and he is live for you in Brooklyn right now. Welcome, Peter.
Thanks for that introduction. That was great. Yeah, I feel like you know, makes me feel like I have more control over what is happening in these poems than I think I actually do. But as seems to be always the case. Whenever someone tells me what's happening in my poems. Thank you all for coming. Yeah, so this little chaplet has like 3 poems in it. I'm gonna read 2 of them. Those are the first 2 I'm gonna read. First one is called The Hangnail. The second one is called Gita Update. And then I'm gonna read a couple older poems. Yeah, so it's called The Hangnail. And when I wrote it, I did actually have a hangnail. So and that's important. The hangnail. I had a hangnail. I couldn't let it go. It put me in a future state. In this future, I didn't hang on to anyone or anything. Varietals of prefab love, a plastic vase of artificial flowers that gave off a real smell. The vibe, you see, was off. Semblance was lobotomizing itself, slithering like destiny out the window as time crawled back down her well. Of course, the future wasn't normal. My hangnail was to blame. The next morning, I saw Joey, but before that, I saw the sun. Celestial paisley, diagrams of heat. It was primely summer. Wildfires walked. I frenetically talked, kidding myself that any of this might not be what I'd feared. Fear of what? The passions? That future? My body's beige activities? An autographic error who drags its fragments through a shoal of fireflies mid-dying, luminescing in torpid imitation of a field of cell phone lights. A future colored like a laugh track that never ends. Let it be known love's signature didn't stay in the air. It dipped sideways so ungraciously and buried itself in the wild, wild grasses. There I discovered objects who claimed such integrity as to represent only themselves. Jabbery is a forest. They spelled out solar homonyms in a font unbefouled by human hands. Understand this whole thing was very, very online. I wipe my sight with a cool damp cloth. Tempered glass, repetitive ash. I wipe sight clean, but the hangnail persists. Rogue moment, scuttly sun. As skin distends translucently, the feeling isn't pain, but a place where pain would be. I pull until there is a space that opens up. A wall is broken down between adjoining rooms. There's a person in each one. I don't know if they're the same. They can't understand what they say to each other, nor do I understand what this means. I ask the hangnail. I want to know. It has no voice, so we'll use my own. I twist my skin to make me speak, and this is what I say. Today feels like the inside of the Apple Store sometimes. Do you feel like the inside of the Apple Store sometimes? I feel like the inside of the Apple Store sometimes. Does everyone feel like the inside of the Apple Store sometimes? I always feel like the inside of the Apple Store sometimes. Is it bad? I ask the hangnail if I feel this way every day. Which way? I ask this. It points but doesn't say. This next poem is called GitHub Bot Update. The title, I think I saw it like written in Sharpie on like a lamppost somewhere, and it was like immediately like this. I have to write a poem with this title. Like this phrase is just like incredibly evocative. Yeah. So. And I think for those of you who have the packet, I think I changed in the sense I sent this out. I think I made some like small changes to it, so I apologize if it's not exactly the same as whatever. GitHub bot update. Hey, do you remember when you used to act as if you loved me? was what you said, though not as if you meant it, meaning but if you meant it, though you didn't, if you did, while not least draped in newness, cerulean, or making sense, senescence, sense-making machine, dumb phone to false render the smile of space. A lie, at least, but with a few truths in it, as a happenstantial thread self-sutures to whatever it is this is, spry dilettante's account of what I could have said but didn't, what could have been but wouldn't, what happened next unspoiled by antecedent. What happened next to me but you? No less spurious than erudition or conniving spume from offset screens, or was it suns, or was it ones? I do believe the words they say, one bad thing happens every day. One good thing happens too in each and every re-upload of the bad things lost stained faces. Just as the lunch break returns to mist, bending all this human lucence into a cardioid of grace, or whoever it stands in for, those forms of self-expression ensconced in their own backlash. The sun comes out to prove you wrong, but that's not really how this goes. Which version's my own again? I neither know nor would I. Why? The next second liable, wrought astral havoc as I come apart before our eyes. To be first causer constitutes a care relation, and I'm not authorized to feel doubt by any ventriloquized authority, though I do possess the shitty gift that causes night to raise its fist up, or grind up mediation into a random crystal's dust I sprinkle on the land to make no spirals grow. It's just a remedy for distance, and all my dappled hells are waving, and all I hear is what you're saying. On my screen, I think I see me waving too, but no one's waving back. Or maybe I'm not waving back. Or maybe all the waves came back as the expression of something else. Down the block, free enterprise resumes. The sign reads optimal self in at least 5 incarnations. To buy their merch, you're pushed into a hole where screen-capped images weep until they float out from shallow graves. From this well of non-repose came headlines of downgraded ghosts, with those of us left over consigned to all the thoughts our minds came up with. Numerical croon, clairaudient swoon, Pink Hawthorne saved to compact disc. Concealed expression at last expressed by the use of index as a verb, for here are 5 signs of withholding plus the WikiHow on making yourself a better version than your offset of dreams. Do you remember when we used to act as if mediation wasn't dying, or when love wasn't the expression of the distance it wants to crack? This living idiom is the worst it's ever been, and I swear the site has action in it. I swear the sky was emptying itself as a known thing does when it leaves a room that won't abide it. Leaves the diacriticals upon the branches, branches the diacriticals upon the trees the eyes the wheeze, crying, I diacritical, for whom I cast love or its expression into the vent of cosmic distance, documenting my confusions in no harmonious order. Each one started off as love and ended visual snow. Such love you cannot explain to yourself, let alone those closest to you. A love that resembles withholding it is, but it's something different too, a withholding that would crack the distance since it's what's withheld from all of you. When I came upon some edges, I didn't think they knew me. I ran the whole way back to center, intending to tell the one who believed in listening. I looked back just once to see if those edges were alone, a neighborhood in which each house is an instance of moral grafting towards the confines of some liquid grace which is yet to happen. I won't mention getting optimal again. I'd closed the window in my brain and then wanted to climb out of. Meanwhile, your fingers acted out a future that didn't need to mean or how I'm against any understanding of why, whether, and by what authority I should reach this new condition. Those earliest fractures were powered by trance or flange or phrase that held no meaning I would then have understood, not even by crushing up syntax regicidally, my own method to automate disgrace as a path to what the sun calls real life, and I call wait to whoever's left to wave to. A syllable of pain no less indented than a gap that isn't fillable, or a light that isn't visible, or a memory that's patched with moments someone else forgot. I can cosset other feelings that fuck around in dubious rhyme or traffic and can privation. I could place blame on those around me if I were one to place blame on anyone or anything non-coextensive with myself. Is anyone here right now? Is everyone here right now? Is everyone optimal right now? Is everyone light right now? Is everyone good right now? I'm so good right now. My voice is full of light right now. I wave hello to my new version, a hell across the street. Remember when you used to act as if you loved me? I know. I saw it in the sky above these. Yeah. This next poem is, so it's part of a longer poem called ACAB. It has 2 parts. I've been trying to write a 3rd part for years, and I haven't successfully written it. And so I'm like, I don't know if there will ever be a 3rd part, but this is 1 part. So ACAB. So yesterday, I was asked to contribute to an edited volume of Fascist Apologist Poetics, and so authored a tract calling for a general strike of the atmosphere, a polar crush of diamonds and diamantine air, 10,000 years in the making, that's brought to you by the mouth of the motor of my mind that says it's here to cure time, and I believe it. So I was moving through a series of labial entry points marked by small triangular gates, lighting up and making cruel sounds, my progression toward measurable good, the sound and light fleeing skyward, and okay, I'll produce good knowledge, so long as all of you promise to forget it later. So my first order being to name the crisis, I sought the lens of a journey that would send me out of the falsity or tender cluelessness where I built the quicksand lectern I would watch the world burn from, and though endowed with lidless clarity, I don't actually look, not at the too many, but too much. Ask me to name the crisis, and I bury my face with my hands. So poets who don't think about the global rise of fascism and the violence of revanchist whiteness keep stepping into my head, instructing me on how to renew the lyric from its febrile death. They glower, half visible and sad, make figurines who feature the police as cold contrasts on the flank of the aggrieved. So then the fascist apologist poet shows his face, begins speaking to me. He promotes a vision of the future with 4 walls, a roof, and warm water. He grabs my ear and puts words in it. They live inside me for an instant, and in that instant, I am lost. Does the instant end if the line does? So I'm lost in the forest of accelerating power, carrying bad faith around my neck in a sack perpetually, some generic Sisyphus. I ask a cop to show me the way to the chorus. When I get there, I'll stop thinking, just go around on the carpet that goes around the ground. But when Sisyphus I ask the cop for directions, the cop says, come here, from the back of my head. And so on. So if I killed a poet in my head who's made of nothing but red ribbon in the forest of power, what new life would grow in its place with the trees again deep lightless? Would I remember the future is more than a misery archive? Would the chorus rise up and devour the lives of the poets of the state, those who count me among their own? And in this instant, I believe them. Even now, as I promise you, I won't. So then the poetic image is an off mirror that stands in for the whole, standing in for its parts. There appears an infinitely long table and people are there singing. I hear songs of indecision. I hear songs of loss. When I open my voice, the file corrupts and the song goes out of control. So the chorus walks over when I'm gone dreaming to show me a future history that isn't disaster. I press end on the dream so I can wake up in time to write it, a poem that comes out losslessly. Is it for all of you? But then morning streams over and in real light, the poem appears false, and is it? Do I believe it? All the cops are bastards, all the crocuses are blooming. Right. And this last poem is called The World Now and In It. Yeah, thank you all for coming. Yeah. The world now and in it. Like subject formation. Composition is a kind of violence. Each time I breathe, I'm hoarding air that could be from another. Existence one way bent at the expense of another common world. Logic of tabulation. Logic of regime. Regime tick. This song is about time passing. This song is about work. Hating work. I'm an enemy of progress. If only because I'm an enemy of time. Meaning I'm an enemy of the avant-garde. Take that one. All art being excess. All excess being waste. Which I mistake for exhalation. Any ontic unity would know. A categorical loneliness. But how can a thing be lonely when there is no outside? My poems are frequently driven by a desire for recuperation that lacks an object. This desire comes at the expense of history and may simply be a desire for ignorance. Ignorance of history, which is actually violent, unlike my fear of hoarding breath, which is a purely poetic anxiousness. When my poems fail, it is often because I'm heralding poetic anxiousness as truth. Now light stands up inside a room. Shaking begins. Perhaps an egg hatching from inside. Just before the limits fled. And I saw you standing there. Did you see me standing there? In my workplace. There exist many white people asking others, how should I feel what I believe? Or rather, What are the correct beliefs and feelings right now? Where do I find them? So we as white people can exhibit correctness in an adequate way. This means being able to tell ourselves that we are a good white person, but it is also about ending the harm whiteness inflicts on the world now and in it. This harm can be denaturalized. It cannot be eliminated without eliminating the source of this harm, which is difficult to relate to in a way that isn't destructive. Feelings that make me a less productive worker, less kind and caring friend. There are words of kindness that are blows so powerful they're difficult to face. I don't know. S tells F she has potential. I am no more or less a spool of address, and that came from all of you. And that came from all of you. Not that this is an ontology of value, but I've cantilevered my metaphors with the fallen, plane of balance, expense debt, metastasis of profits raid, or bless this fake Arcadia, predicated on a swerve, away from lines of thinking that cross what isn't accounted for, pleasure, boredom, clarity. They are worthless as they lack a worth that admits quantification, so they exist outside of that. There occurs to me the claim, because it traffics in the outside, poetry is uniquely suited to the task of repairing immanence. I don't know what I mean by uniquely suited, repairing, or immanence. This is a lie. I know what I mean, just not if I believe it. For many years, I believed truth was for the naive and undiscerning, but I had to give that up in the face of my growing hatred for the fake. Jane Gregory has a poem called "It is Disgusting and Imitates Truth," and I often do this, imitation truth. When I catch myself with words that are not true but act as if they are, I compose myself with such pieces, not my own pieces, but those taken from an elsewhere that may no longer exist and may not yet exist and may not ever exist and may exist but only as an outside that isn't here. Though I do hear sound above me. The helicopter's range. It's starting to rain, which is the outside saying, fuck you, I'm here.
That was incredible. Yeah. This past Wednesday, novelist, organizer, and community mental health worker Imogen Binney read a poetry project, debuting her new zine called Why Are You So Fucked Up? Here, she writes about how anxiety is the intellectual self trying to reason with or solve problems for the emotional or feeling self. She argues that these two exist in different planes and that trying to bring the two together will never work. It is an impossible task. And so we fail at it constantly. Benny encourages us to learn how to feel our way through life instead. Go dancing, ride a bike, breathe, and so on. Here, the intellectual self falls away into the bodily self. Jameson Fitzpatrick's work separates, then weds these two disparate ideas, the intellectual, the feeling body, self, like a date kissing you, and these are her words, properly, not too quick, close enough, our stomachs pressed together in a second sort of kiss. Poetry is not life, and Jameson renders Imogen's impossible task a little bit possible through her work. It is through this tension, which I see in her poetry as the tension between the desire to be consumed and the desire to be whole, or to be plucked like a flower versus plucked like a string, that Jameson's poetry dons its precise and clear dress. She writes of love, sex, desire, and transness with sharpness and deliberateness, a deer staring at you from across the path. From the chaplet debuting today, duet for Marshall Voice and Sappho Voice, a reworking of Sappho's fragment 90 to describe something like rejection, like a sweet gold apple high in a tree, blushing on the uppermost bough where the pickers have forgotten it. Jameson maintains a humility throughout her wordplay, like a nymph prancing through the woods, an onlooker at Tea on Fire Island who is still dancing just a little bit. She lounges in it. Here she's again from the chaplet. Rest for the girls, the muses, perfumed with violet, brought gifts. Rest and the clarifying lyre. Rest, one supple skin's gone dry. Rest. I am grateful for these poems, for their softness and presence. It only follows that Jameson also translates between and across languages, and Duet for Marshall voice and Sappho voice is a delightful experimental translation and lyric. It is also, I think, a love story between two wealthy women. Marschallin, the aristocratic lead from Richard Strauss's opera Der Rosenkavalier. And I think that those H's have those R's have H's in them, but I can't say. And the Greek poet Sappho, who composed lyrics to be played in the lyre on the Isle of Lesbos, who, the story goes, never married, except perhaps to a man whose name translates loosely as Alcock of Dick Island. The relationship between the voices, these two women who create the duet, shifts throughout the chaplet. Are they talking to one another, themselves, to other lovers, to their fears, to someone in the room right now? Throughout her work, Jameson builds poems on startling depictions of logic. If this, then that, not this, I woke and this was new. Some examples. I couldn't catch until the ball became political. If the medium admits the gaps, strange angles, registering their presence as flickers, floaters, other lapses in vision. I might plague you less if you had real problems. If he is known to me, he is either known intimately or barely, and so on. In Duet for Marshall voice and Sappho voice, these tricks of logic fall away, instead opening towards a rawer, truer, brighter poetics of desire. We get love affairs beyond the immediacy of a hookup, a slow burn, and these gorgeous directives. And this is Jameson again as Marshall. Now go quickly and do as your heart instructs. Go serenade her and let this be. You're a man, you'll leave. Please join me in welcoming Jameson Fitzpatrick to Gifts.
That was so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I'm very tickled, and I'm grateful to everyone at Belladonna who is making this possible. I'm going to be reading from a big work in process that I sometimes refer to as a book-length poem across many voices. Some of those voices are original, whatever that means, and some of them are translated versions of other people's words, two of which are collected in the chaplet. So you'll hear the Marschallin, the protagonist of Der Rosenkavalier. Those words are by the Austrian poet Hugo von Hofmannsthal, who wrote the libretto for Strauss's opera, and the other is, of course, Sappho. The whole book is very loosely based on the plot of Rosenkavalier. You'll hear a little bit more about it, but basically the Marschallin is an aging noblewoman breaking up with her younger lover, Octavian. She sometimes calls by pet names. Yeah, that's all I think I gotta say. Thank you again. Marschallin voice. Can't I remember a girl, fresh cut from the convent, who was entered into the order of marriage? Where is she now? Right, look for last year's snow, so I say. But how can it be, really, that I was the diminutive, resi, and will one day be the stooped one, too? The old woman, the old field marshal's wife. There she goes again, old Princess Resi. How can that happen? How could God do that, where I am always the same? And if he has to do it like that, why let me look on with such a clear view? Why not hide it from me? It's a mystery, a great mystery, and our portion to bear it. And in the how lies all the difference. Discursive voice. A pants part in opera refers to a male role written for a female voice. Please forgive the crudeness of the terms in which I've accepted to speak. Also called a breeches or trousers role. I prefer pants part because I am a poet writing in English. From the German Hosenroll. Pants parts are most often written for mezzo-soprano or contralto vocal ranges. The characters written as pants parts are most often teenaged or prepubescent boys. Their high voices are meant to convey youth, though they need not be played by young women. De Rosencavalier's Octavian, sung by a mezzo-soprano, is one of the operatic repertoire's most famous pants parts. If I could choose, I'd be a contralto, as I don't know who I'd be if I weren't deep-voiced. Though I wasn't once when I was a boy soprano. Though if I were a contralto, I couldn't play the Marschallin. To be fair, if I'd stayed a soprano, to play the Marschallin, I would have to have had a still different life. An opera singer's. When I sang most seriously, I preferred smoking and not practicing. I still do, though I smoke less and practice more now that I'm older. In most stage versions of Peter Pan, the role of Peter is a kind of pants part. He won't grow up. Octavian, the audience must imagine, will. When I was a child, I wanted to be anything but, hence the smoking. Though my imagination stopped there, as though caught in the throat of something. Sappho voice, rest. For the girls, the muses, perfumed with violet, brought gifts, rest. And the clarifying lyre, rest. Once supple skins gone dry, rest. Like milk, my hair has turned, my heart drags, my knees on which I used to leap and buck, now buckle. Daily I suffer this. What else could I do? No one can stop for decrepitude. And so it is said, Dawn, with her rosy wrists, rested fine young Tithonus to the far reaches of the earth. But old age got him good and gray in the end. The license said he had to stick around anyway. Marschallin voice. My mood is already lifted. You know how I am. Half of May is merry, half of May is sad. I can't just command my thoughts. Was I afraid? A little, maybe, but I caught myself and said, it can't be, it won't stand. And if it had, Tavi, don't squeeze me. If you hold sand too tightly in your hand, it will run through your fingers. Oh, be gentle now, be sensible and soft and good. Please don't be like other men, the way of the field marshal and the baron. No, don't become them. Discursive voice. J.M. Barrie's 1904 play, Peter Pan, or The Boy Who Wouldn't Grow Up, is a good example of a story in which the eponymous character is not the protagonist. Wendy Darling is the protagonist of Peter Pan, as hers is the central drama. Barrie might have agreed. The first edition of the novel version was published under the title Peter and Wendy in 1911. Though I prefer the misdirection of the original. The central drama of Peter Pan is that Wendy does grow up. The best scene in Peter Pan is the epilogue when Peter returns years later and discovers this. Because it is the saddest, because Wendy must make the choice to turn up the light so he can see, though Peter begs her not to. Then threatens her sleeping daughter in reprisal, then breaks down in tears. It was my favorite part as a child. I was not like the lost boys, demanding happy ends to the stories young Wendy told them. The epilogue was not in the original stage production. Barry wrote it later under the title When Wendy Grew Up, an Afterthought. Octavian is the titular role in De Rosenkavalier, the Knight of the Rose or the Rose Bearer. It's not a real rose, it's a silver one, an engagement gift he must present on behalf of another man, the Marshallans' awful cousin, the Baron, to the beautiful young Sophie, with whom he falls in love at first sight, though she is to marry the Baron, and Octavian is already in love with the beautiful married Marshallan. The central drama of De Rosenkavalier, which is the comedy, is the Marshallan becoming an afterthought. The last word of Peter and Wendy is heartless, though out of context, the intended irony is lost. Sappho voice. Tender Adonis is dying. Aphrodite, what do we do? Beat your chests, girls, and rip your ships to shreds. Marshallan voice. Right now, I need to feel the weakness of all temporal things, right down to my heart. How one should hold on to nothing, how one can cling to nothing, how everything runs between the fingers. All that we grasp after comes apart, all dissolves into fog and dream. Time is the fundament, Pen. Time doesn't change course. Time is strange. You might live as though it's nothing, then all of a sudden you feel nothing but around us and also within us. Into faces it trickles, in mirrors it trickles, between my temples it flows, and between me and you it flows, quiet as an hourglass. Oh, Pan, sometimes I can hear its implacable hiss. Sometimes I get up in the middle of the night and still all the thoughts. Though one shouldn't fear time. She too is an image of God. Sappho voice. If you love me, go make your bed with the younger bride, for I can't survive that you would survive me. When I was a child enthusiast of Greek mythology, this is just cursive voice again, my favorite make-believe scene was goddess bidding farewell to her mortal lover. This type of doomed relationship between a goddess and a mortal man is an example of what Claude Lévi-Strauss called a mytheme, a gross constituent unit of myth, a theme on which many variations can be played. Eos and Tithonus, for example, the ideological myth accounting for the origin of cicadas. Eos, the divine personification of dawn, is so taken with the Trojan prince that she carries him off to her palace at the end of the earth. So that they might continue to love indefinitely, she persuades Zeus to grant her consort immortality. But she forgets to request eternal youth for him too, so Tithonus in time grows old, wasting away until he is no more than an undying husk and a complaining voice. That is a cicada. The mortal lovers of this mytheme rarely fare well. Adonis gets gored by a boar while he and Aphrodite are out hunting one day. From his blood blossoms the first anemone, another etiology. The earliest documented reference to Adonis is Sappho's. Before he died, Aphrodite had to share Adonis with Persephone, who raised him from infancy and later took him as a lover. Weird in the usual way of treating it. Though to love a man is so often to love a boy in need of mothering. The Marshallan knows this. Now I have to comfort the boy, as does Wendy, darling. No one knows it so well as I. While neither is a goddess, one feels in them a certain ascendancy of character, an X quality. When in childhood I played the part of goddess bidding farewell to her mortal lover, I was breaking his heart to spare him a worse fate. This too is an ideological story, a gross constituent unit. Sappho voice, moon down, Pleiades down, the night, like my life, half past. Meanwhile, I sleep alone. Marshallin voice. Today or tomorrow or the next day. Didn't I tell myself? So it happens to every woman. Didn't I know? Didn't I vow to bear it with a steady heart? Today or tomorrow or the next. The boy, how sheepishly he stands there in the middle. Was she so quick to love him? Her pallor offers the answer already. I promised to love him the right way, such that even his love for another I love, though I didn't think it would come upon me quite so soon. There are many things in the world you wouldn't believe to hear tell of them. Only those who experience believe and can't explain. The boy stands there, and I stand here. And with that new girl, he will be happy, insofar as men understand happiness. Thank you.